Hi everyone, so today's video is going to be another solved true crime case, and we're going to be talking about the murder of Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard. So before I begin, I just want to go ahead and give my usual disclaimer that this video is for educational purposes only, and the information that I'm going to share is just information that I obtained online and compiled into one video. I mean no disrespect to any of the characters or people that I'm going to talk about in this video. All right, so with that being said, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell button. That way, when I post more videos, you are able to see them and be notified and join me and listen to more videos. All right, everyone, so let's go ahead and start. The story of Dee Dee Claudine Blanchard starts in Chuck Bay, which is in the northern part of LaFontaine, Louisiana. It is a very small city with a population of about 5,177 people. Dee Dee was born and raised in this city. She was one of 5 children. Her dad was called Claude Anthony Pitre and her mom was called Emma Grescore. She was born in 1967. Her family did not have very good things to say about Dee Dee. They claimed that she stole from them. She wrote bad checks, and they say that whenever things didn't go her way, she would resort to stealing to make them pay. So really nobody had great things to say about her. When she was 24 years old, she met a boy called Rod Blanchard. Rod was 17 years old, and he says that they met at the skating ring, and as they continued to hang out together, they started to like each other more and more, and around that time, Dee Dee became pregnant. So when Dee Dee became pregnant, Rod felt a responsibility to marry her because he was raised Southern and he knew that this was the right thing to do. So Rod stepped up and married Claudine, and during the course of their marriage, he was never really happy. So at 18 years old, the morning that he turned 18, he says that he woke up and asked himself, what am I doing here? And decided to go ahead and leave. Well, Dee Dee ended up having a daughter called Gypsie, and she was born in July 1991, and they called her Gypsie because Rod liked Guns N' Roses and Claudine just liked the name Gypsie. And after having the baby, she went and moved in with her stepmother and her father. When she was with the stepmother, as soon as Dee Dee moved in, the stepmother started to get really ill. She would have chronic illnesses that would take her to the hospital, and she'd be in the hospital for months. And so the family started accusing Dee Dee of poisoning her stepmother. So because of that, she ended up moving out with them. Later on in her life, she was accused of killing her biological mother by starving her because she had been with her mother as she grew older and taking care of her. But the family believed that she had starved her mother to death. These claims were never, accusations and claims were never substantiated. She was never arrested for that. However, during the course of her life, she was arrested for bad checks. She was arrested for a lot of petty crimes, and that is why it's believed that she changed her name from Claudine Blanchard to start calling herself Dee Dee. When Gypsy was 3 months old, Dee Dee said that Gypsy had sleep apnea. She took her to an array of tests, sleep tests and sleep studies, and they all came back negative. Rod said that he never really understood, anything about the sleep apnea or what was really going on. It is after this claim that Gypsy had sleep apnea that Dee Dee began to say that Gypsy had an array of medical issues. The list is long. I couldn't even go through it all in this one video, but I'll tell you a few of the disorders that she started and illnesses that she started to say Gypsy had. She said that Gypsy had leukemia. And so as a result, as Gypsy grew older, Dee Dee would shave Gypsy's hair. She would shave her hair off, and sometimes she would shave her own hair off as a form to show support to her daughter who had leukemia. Also, she said that Gypsy was mentally retarded and was functioning at a level of a younger child. So for example, when Gypsy was 10, Dee Dee said that she was functioning at an age of a 7-year-old. Also, she said that she had an abnormal chromosomal disorder that caused her to have muscular dystrophy. The doctors did do a test to test her muscles. They did a biopsy of her muscles so that they could see if indeed she had muscular dystrophy. And again, those results came back negative. Several times, Gypsy was underwent surgery for many conditions. She had surgery for her eyes, surgery for her ears, because Dee Dee was saying that she couldn't really see and she had hearing problems. She had surgery to remove some of her teeth. She had all kinds of surgeries to remove all kinds of different things. But actually, Gypsy was actually fine. Gypsy was not ill. Gypsy was a healthy child. And so it was not quite understood why Dee Dee was doing this. But at the time that it was happening, nobody really knew that she was fabricating this information. Not even the medical professionals or Rod, the father of the child. Rod continued to be very involved in Dee Dee and Gypsy's life. He continued to pay Dee Dee child support, about $1,200 per month that he would pay. And at that time, Dee Dee and Gypsy stayed in Katrina. Well, after Hurricane Katrina, Dee Dee claimed that she had lost all the documents, all the medical records, and including Gypsy's birth certificate. So really, nobody really knew her age except obviously the family, her father and her family. And Dee Dee used this to her advantage. She would always say that Gypsy was younger than she was. And I think this was really just to keep her having that childlike demeanor so that the story would even be more believable. When they moved to Springfield, Missouri, she started receiving a lot of donations because people were very empathetic and the story was very touching. You know, that here was the single mother who has lost everything in the flood in Hurricane Katrina, moving here with her daughter who's in a wheelchair. And by the way, yeah, Gypsy was now in a wheelchair. And I'll tell you more about that. But, you know, just feeling really sad and empathetic towards this mom who had moved from New Orleans after having lost everything with her daughter in a wheelchair with nothing, you know. So those kind of stories just pull at people's heartstrings. And so they did for the people who were in Springfield, Missouri. And so people started to donate stuff to them. Initially, she was staying in like rented housing. But after people heard their story and they were really empathetic, the Habitat for Humanity built a home for Gypsy and Dee Dee, and the home actually had a wheelchair ramp that was meant to help, you know, Gypsy go up the stair, you know, the stairs much easier. Well, so how she became to be in a wheelchair, when she was 7 or 8 years old, she had a minor, very, very minor accident off of her grandfather's motorcycle. It was like, I think she had an abrasion on her knee, something very, very small. But after that, Gypsy says that her mother, Dee Dee, told her that the doctors had said she needed to be in a wheelchair. So, you know, she portrayed the image that Gypsy could not walk and Gypsy could not get out of a wheelchair. And so Gypsy was in the wheelchair for all of her life, pretty much. You know, from the time that she was 7, 8 till the time she was about 23 years old. And this girl was fine. She had nothing wrong. Gypsy actually says that she knew that she could walk, you know, behind closed doors because her mother would tell her, don't walk in public. Don't let people see you walking. So she knew she could walk, but she didn't know, you know, if all the other ailments were true or false, the leukemia, that she never really had her hair out. She never grew her hair because, again, her mother would shave her hair. And when she shaved her hair, she would say, well, what's the point of keeping it? It's going to fall out anyway. Remember, you have leukemia, so let's just go ahead and cut it. So she never grew her hair. She never had long hair. She would wear these ginormous big glasses, you know, and the reason was because Dee Dee, again, would say she had eye problems. Her teeth also started to fall out and rot because she was on a barrage of medications from everything you can think of. At one point, Dee Dee said that she had seizures. She had seizures, and so took her to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed anti-seizure medicine for her. So she was taking all kinds of medicines, chemo drugs, anti-seizure, anything you can think of, because of all these ailments that she apparently had. So also because of that, it's not known when Gypsy was taken out of school. It's believed that Dee Dee stopped taking her to school, I think at second grade or kindergarten, is about when it's thought of that she stopped going to an actual traditional school. And the reason was because Dee Dee was unemployed, and taking care of a disabled child was just a lot for her. So she decided it would be better to keep her at home and take care of her at home and give her the best care that she possibly could. So Gypsy stopped going to school at a very, very young age. Matter of fact, she taught herself to read by reading Harry Potter books, which I think was, commendable that she was able to do that. But she taught herself to read. So really there was just, a lot of things that would happen, but mainly surrounding all these illnesses that Dee Dee said that Gypsy had, which actually didn't exist. So one time, Dee Dee took Gypsy to a doctor called Dr. Bernardo, and she wanted him to take a look at her brain functioning or muscular dystrophy or something of that nature. But I think it was a brain functioning. So Dr. Bernardo ordered an MRI and also ordered some blood tests and a lot of things that he ordered because, again, Dee Dee didn't have any past medical records because, again, she claimed that she had lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. So when the results came back, the MRI was negative and the blood tests were negative.
For a person that has not walked for years, she should have technically almost no muscles in her lower extremities. But she did have muscles that looked quite normal. And she was able to support her body weight. I remember her standing. So I had a big doubt about the whole thing from the beginning.
And Dr. Bernardo, being a neurologist and a specialist, he really couldn't understand why, based off of what Dee Dee was saying, how the test would come back negative. And he began to believe that Dee Dee was not only lying, she was actually abusing her child through this, and she had a condition called Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a condition where a caregiver or a parent will make their patient or their child sick so as to get attention, so as to reap the benefits of that illness. And, it's really all about them with this illness. It's not about the child. It's not about the patient. It's about them getting attention. People looking at them saying, oh my gosh, what a great caregiver Dee Dee is. Have you seen all the sacrifices that she makes? She shaves her hair when her daughter shaves her hair. She's always with her daughter. Oh my goodness, she loves her daughter. All those things feed the person with Munchausen by proxy, and it makes them want to do it even more. So Dr. Bernardo started to suspect that this is what Dee Dee had. So he actually called New Orleans. He did say, okay, fine. She's saying that she doesn't have any records, but I need to do my due diligence as a physician and see if I can get the records and look into it, because this girl had been to many doctors, reputable physicians, and nobody was saying anything. People were treating her. People were operating on her. People were giving her medication, prescribing medication, in spite of the tests being negative. And so Dr. Bernardo surely thought, well, if she really had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, another doctor would have probably found that out. So he wanted to make sure, that he was right. So he called the hospitals back in New Orleans where Dee Dee had claimed that she had gone, where she had obtained the records that had been destroyed in the flood. He contacted those physicians and found out that actually all the tests that had been done in New Orleans were always negative. Not only that, when a doctor began to suspect Dee Dee of doing anything, she would just change doctors and they would never see her again. So Dr. Bernardo was very concerned about this. So he wrote actually a note, he wrote a document. And in that document, he actually says that, the mother is not a good historian. Like she doesn't really know much about what she's talking about, although she appears to. He wrote his suspicions in that note. And, again, Dee Dee probably found out about that and just stopped going to Dr. Bernardo altogether, So he never really did go to child services. He never really did go anywhere. He never, reported his suspicions to the authorities. He really didn't want to bring a lot of limelight to his suspicions because he felt, what if he's wrong? And they had been people who were always on the TV, Dee Dee and Gypsy, because of all the empathy, Habitat for Humanity, building a home for them, people giving them donations, many things. So he really had to be cautious. He really had to act with trepidation. You can't just start accusing people in case you're wrong. And so that's what he was doing. At one point, Gypsy got a feeding tube. So imagine she got a feeding tube when she was young and she continued to be fed through this feeding tube till she was about 23 years old. And so as a result, Gypsy was very thin. And when she would talk, she had a high-pitched voice. And also, she wore these big glasses and she had a childlike demeanor. So when Dee Dee would say that Gypsy was such and such an age, which was much younger and false, people would believe it because Gypsy did come across as such. In 2007, Gypsy was awarded the Child of the Year award by the Oli Foundation, which supports children with feeding tubes, because she was on this feeding tube. And so I'll let you see a video of her accepting a speech. So that way accepting the award and giving a speech, so that you can hear that high-pitched voice and the look that was kind of there. So you can see how people actually believe this story.
Gypsie Blanchard and her mother Dee Dee Blanchard from Springfield, Missouri, to the stage.
So being constantly in the hospitals, being always in the wheelchair, this was Gypsy's life from when she was little to when she was into her adult, when she was like 23. So she missed out on a lot of things. She didn't have that many friends. Her mother was always with her. And one of the reasons why Dee Dee made sure she would always stick by where Gypsy was to make sure that Gypsy wouldn't say anything out of line that would make it seem intelligent, or she wouldn't contradict the story, or she just wouldn't make a mistake. So she was always with her. It's actually said that in almost every interview, in every picture, every time, Dee Dee always was holding Gypsy's hand at all times. She would always hold her hand. And Gypsy later on revealed that the reason was because when people would ask her stuff and Gypsy would respond, if she started to respond any kind of way that Dee Dee did not agree with, she would squeeze her hand really, really hard. She would squeeze it. So Gypsy would know to keep quiet. So as a result, Gypsy never really talked that much in public, which further solidified that mindset that she was mentally retarded. She was functioning at a low level. She was really sick because she would never really answer questions. She would never really talk because her mother was always holding her hand and squeezing it. So as a result, that story was more believable to the public, to people, because that's all that they would see. So just keep that in mind. Gypsy never had a life. I can't even imagine what that would have been like for her, except she didn't know any better. She didn't know what that was. She didn't know that that was wrong because she didn't know any other life. Actually, a lot of people do speculate and actually say that Dee Dee was abusive in that manner to Gypsy. giving her medications that she didn't need, letting her have all these surgeries, keeping her, confining her in a wheelchair for most of her life. And all these things, it just led people later to realize that Gypsy was actually being abused, but it never seemed that way. Remember, because Dee Dee was loving. She was always with her daughter, hugging her, and another thing I forgot to mention was, in addition to that Habitat for Humanity home that they got, that was built for them, they got a lot of stuff. They got free trips to Disney, and Gypsy loved Disney. She loved Disney, and so did Dee Dee. So they were always going to Disney, all expense paid, everything. Again, because people empathized and they saw, her in a wheelchair and they felt sorry for them. So it was a lot of people who would step up and who would, donate and do good to them, which is another reason why Dr. Bernardo believed that she did have that Munchausen syndrome by proxy, because of all the, if you want to call them perks, I don't know if we can call them perks, but to Dee Dee, apparently it appears as though they were perks. She was getting perks from her daughter being ill. She was not working. Everything was paid for. She would get government assistance because she had a disabled child. And not to mention, Rod was still paying the $1,200 something a month for child support, and they had a free home and all these things, So I guess we could say for Dee Dee, these were perks, So again, nobody really knew Gypsy's age, because Dee Dee would always switch it up depending on the situation. And also, when they arrived to Springfield, Missouri the first time, Dee Dee told the story that, Rod, who is Gypsy's father, that he was a very abusive man and that he was not in their lives and that they were in hiding and didn't want him to know where they were. And he was very unsupportive, not there, which was also false, because Rod continued to not only try to be in his daughter's life, by that time he was remarried also, but he still paid child support every month and would try by all means even to spend time with Gypsy by himself with his family. But Dee Dee wouldn't allow it, because remember, not only was Dee Dee fooling the rest of the world, she was also fooling Rod, because he wouldn't go to the doctor's appointment. So he believed that she was confined in a wheelchair. He believed that she had leukemia. He believed all these problems that Dee Dee said that she had. He believed that she was not functioning at an adult capacity. He believed that because it was all based off of Dee Dee.
Dee Dee told me she's not gonna live to be, 18 years old. She may be an old teenager. That's about it. I was like, really? It was shocking. It was disturbing.
And so at one point, I remember I saw somewhere that, one of the neighbors called the police to say they felt that Gypsy was being abused. And so the police went there. And when they got there, Dee Dee was very nice and kind and charming and showed them the home and said, look, you can look around. The house is not in disarray. Stuff is put away where it needs to be. Stuff is together. There's no plates laying around. She's well fed. All the signs and symptoms that everything was fine were right there. And so the police didn't believe that and left. So through the years, a lot of people that could have really helped Gypsy didn't help her. Her dad, even though it wasn't his fault, didn't help her or didn't look further or didn't ask more questions. Even though he really loved her, the physicians who were taking care of her continued to operate on her. Nobody was really stepping in. But you must remember that Gypsy did love her mother and she believed her mother. She only knew that she can walk, but everything else, she believed that she was ill. She had all those ailments, and she was pretty close to her mother. So they had a great relationship. So in 2001, Gypsy and her mother went to a science fiction and fantasy convention. And there, they would wear costumes. They would always wear costumes, wear wigs, all kinds of things. It's something that Gypsy really loved, science fiction and fantasy. She loved that. And while she was there, she met a guy who was older than her, but not too much older considering her current real age, because the age that she was living under the assumption of was not her real age, right? It was the age that her mother was saying she was, but that wasn't the real age. She was much older. So she met this guy, and she was a teenager then. She was excited. She had met somebody. He liked her, and she was in this wheelchair, but he still liked her, and he was so happy. She was so happy. So she wanted to run away from her mom, and so she and this guy, don't know how she even managed to do this because Dee Dee was always there, but they ran away from Dee Dee and rented a motel somewhere, and she was just having the time of her life, and Dee Dee found her. She found her. She was mortified, and she told this guy that my daughter is underage, and here you are cooped up with her in a motel. I am going to call the police, report you, and you are going to be arrested for, child endangerment, having sexual relations with a minor, all those kind of things. And the guy didn't want nothing to do with that. He had just met Gypsie. It was not that deep, so he was like, you know what? I don't need to deal with her. I need to see her. So Dee Dee took Gypsie back. When Dee Dee started to look into it, to figure out how did she even meet this guy, she found out that Gypsie had actually met this guy online. She had been communicating with him online for a while. So she was very upset. She took her Gypsie's computer and bashed it in and bashed it in and bashed it in. And then with a hammer, and according to Gypsie, she also then took her fingers and also bashed them with a hammer as well, to teach her a lesson. And Gypsie says that day she was also beat with a hanger. And I guess her mom, according to Gypsie, was trying to tell her that, you will never be able to do this, and it's unacceptable, and I will not accept it. Okay, you stay here, you stay with me, and we're not having that. So that was really supposed to work, because she had smashed her computer, but unbeknownst to Dee Dee, she still had a computer. So every time when she would go to bed, Gypsie, who could walk in the house, would go and take the computer and get online. And she actually had 5 Facebook accounts. Imagine that. So she was very active online, and Dee Dee didn't even know, and so while online on a Christian dating website, she met a boy called Nicholas Goldie? And so she started to talk to him. They started to get along. They just had chemistry. They clicked, and you can imagine she was a young lady and never really had friends except this one girl who was called Aaliyah, who actually took Gypsie to be like her little sister. She saw her as a little sister, kind of felt like she needed to protect her. But Aaliyah didn't actually know that her and Gypsie were about the same age. Aaliyah was like 23 and so was Gypsie. But because of how Gypsie looked and how she acted and all the ailments that her mother had been saying she had all through the years, Aaliyah felt that she thought she was actually older than Gypsie. And so kind of saw herself as a big sister, in a big sister role. And so when Gypsie met Nicholas, they clicked, they had chemistry, and, she would send Nicholas nude photos or kinky photos, and they would send each other photos and, just teenager stuff. And so all the while, Dee Dee didn't know this. But they really wanted to meet each other because they had been dating now online for a while. So they really wanted to meet each other. So they said, okay, how are we going to do this? Because Gypsie was like, my mother is always with me. She never leaves me alone. So if we're going to meet, it's just going to have to be like something spontaneous, even though you and I know it's not. So Gypsie suggested that she would buy a movie ticket for Nicholas to meet her at the movie house. And then while they're at the movie house, Nicholas would pretend to bump into Gypsie. And then Gypsie would introduce him to her mother and see how her mother reacts. If her mother likes him, then that's great. Their relationship can be out on the open and they can date freely and be happy, right? But if her mother doesn't like him, which they were not really anticipating, they were just hoping that, she will like him. He's younger, and so he's nice, quiet, so they were like, pretty confident that maybe she would like him. But Nicholas also had issues of his own. He actually did function at the age of a 15-year-old. He was autistic, but the issues that he really had was that he had also been arrested several times for several things, so he had issues of his own apart from Gypsie. He had a long criminal record, And so by himself without Gypsy, he had his own issues. Anyway, the day that they were meeting at the movie house, Gypsy and her mom bought popcorn, everything, went in the movie house, and then they met Nicholas. And she introduced Nicholas to her mother, and her mother was very irritated. And she was like, Gypsy, that boy looks like a criminal. He is not good for you. He just looks like a bad boy. Like, he is bad news. Like, you do not need to be around such a boy. Where did you meet him? And she was like, I just met him here at the movies. And she was like, no, I don't even want to see you talking to him again or anything like that. So, Gypsy was a submissive child, obedient, and she was like, okay. But that day at the movie house, her and Nicholas had planned to meet in the bathroom later during the movie. And so Gypsy said she wanted to go to the bathroom, and she wheeled herself to the bathroom. And mind you, remember, she could walk. So even if she would wheel herself to the bathroom, she would still get up and walk and use the bathroom and everything. Just people didn't need to see her. So she met Nicholas in the bathroom and they had sex. So they were so excited that they had consummated their relationship, and this relationship was just moving so fast, and it was so exciting for them, and Dee Dee didn't know any of this stuff. So they started to be concerned because Gypsy wanted a normal life. She just wanted to be like any other kid out there. Actually, she was now a woman. She was 23. She wanted to get married, have children, but she felt like if Dee Dee is around, that's never going to happen for her. So one time they were talking with Nicholas, and she started to confide in him that, Nicholas, I actually can walk, and started telling her all these things, except of course the ailments that she thought were legitimate. She told him everything. And so Nicholas was so sad. And he said, you know what, Gypsy, I will always be there for you, and I will always protect you, and I'll always protect you from anything. And so Gypsy was like, are you serious about that? And he was like, yeah. And she was like, well, would you protect me from anybody? And he was like, yeah, I'll protect you from anyone. And she was like, even my mom? And he was like, yeah, I'll protect you from anybody. I love you. I will protect you from anyone, even your mom. So then Gypsy then suggested that, well, if you protect me from even my mom, well, why don't we not kill her? Why don't we kill her so that you and I can be together, so we can live happily ever after with no interruption, without having to worry about her controlling and all that. And so Nicholas was like, okay, I think that's a great idea. We could probably do that, So this is, I think, a good part to stop part one of this story. And so it's a very, very interesting story. I found it so super interesting that I knew I had to cover this story. So tune in for part two so you can hear exactly what happened, and if they actually end up killing her, and how they were caught, and everything. I mean, it's so interesting. There's so many twists and turns that you don't even see coming, But so join me in part two. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button, because when you hit the bell button, then when I post part two, you will be notified and you will know. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this story, because I love talking about crime. And so I'll see you on part two.